Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have a returning good brother to the temple. Previously, the man behind SCP, the Tabletop RPG, now back with its second edition that is completely free on DriveThruRPG. The one and only zombie mouse himself, Jason Keech. How you doing today, man?
Doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm just counting down the days until summer officially ends, so I can say good riddance to bad rubbish.
I don't like winter though.
I do.
Yeah, I love the fall time, but I don't like driving in the snow.
There's no such thing as fall where I am. There's just winter and not winter. Because forests do not care about the middle seasons.
That's true. So yeah, how you been?
I've been good. I've been always keeping myself busy with one project or another. Some of them making a lot more progress than others. And of course, as I mentioned to you before, I went live celebrating 10 years of doing this thing, and I hope to do it for another 10 years.
I'm sure you will.
But now, a while back I had you on for SCP, and I was a bit surprised to see the second edition. I don't remember how I came across the notion of a second edition, but I did. So one of the things I'm curious is, what prompted doing a second edition of SCP? Was it just feedback over time or something else?
It was feedback over time. I'm very proud of first edition, don't get me wrong. I love it. It's still a great game. But I kind of felt a lot of it was more for me and my friends, and I wasn't really targeting new players. And since SCP is kind of like popular in its own right, it did bring in people not used to role-playing games.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I should probably do something to kind of have an easier entrance into the role-playing community. And while doing so, I thought I would make another role-playing game, again, just for me and my friends, and this one was called Para. And I used that kind of as a testing grounds for some new ideas that I thought about putting into a second edition or a revised edition. And eventually, the system that the way I wanted to change the system was significant enough that it warranted a second edition. So I took the elements of Para, combined it with the elements of SCP, simplified everything as much as I could while keeping room for expansions, and it's hard to explain, but basically pleasing both sides, making it so it's easy for newer players and giving everything that veterans still want. So mostly customization.
Yeah. And within the first few pages of second edition, you do have a first edition versus second edition thing, and there's a few things that I wanted to get into and kind of get a feel for what was the reason for the different changes that you did. So the first one on that is reworking attribute dice.
Yes. First edition, you would, just as a refresher, you would buy a bunch of D6s, and then once you have so many D6s, you could buy a D8, and then you have all these dice you purchased, and at the end of it, you take the top 4 of any of those dice that you purchased. Like, you could have 10 D6 purchased, and 3 D8, and 1 D10, and then you'd only take the top 4, but there was a lot of wasted space on the sheet for that. And with Para, along with another game I made called Spaceship Architect, it technically is a very similar system. It's very similar. You roll 4 dice, take the top 2, but you don't have to buy these extra dice. It was kind of wasted space on the character sheet, and I don't know if you've seen the character sheet for second edition, but it looks visually pleasing with how much room it's taking up for those dice spaces compared to first edition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially the same mechanical system. It's just a better way of expressing that on the character sheet.
I can get that. So the next major one is killing off decimals.
Yeah, that was number one on the feedback. Me and my play testers that I've been with for decades, we got so used to it that it was just kind of second nature, and it's very abnormal compared to most other role-playing games. So the most feedback I got was, yuck, decimal systems, why? And I think a lot of it is like if you had lots of decimals in a role-playing game where you'd be adding 1.3 to 1.9 or something, and you have to do all this extra math, I think that's probably a little intimidating, but the game doesn't really do that. But either way, the decimal systems were kind of unneeded. They were basically a very elaborate way of breaking ties, which isn't really necessary. So again, I wanted to simplify everything for newbies, to put it no other way, and make it so it was easier to basically understand. And in the reverse of that, I went to the totally other direction and I added multipliers instead. So instead of having decimal points, instead of having bonuses to skills like a 2 plus a 1, there's a chance, or there's ways of getting either a ×2 or a ×3 multiplier. Excuse me. Which would obviously multiply your skill by 2 or ×3. Mm-hmm. And it makes it so your skills have a much higher impact on the game.
And I can certainly get that. The next one would be reworking experience.
Yeah, that was an idea I got from my niece, funny enough. Well, she was one of the play testers back in the day, and whenever I gave out experience, she'd always be like, oh, this math. And I was thinking, it's not that hard. But then it kind of dawned on me, like, my goal for giving out experience in these games is a set amount of progression each session. And it dawned on me, why not just get rid of experience and just have flat bonuses each session? And that led to one of the next things you probably might want to bring up is the disruption classes. That's a huge part of the game. Mm-hmm. But there's really no need for mathing it out with points if you're just going to give flat bonuses. And it just streamlined everything much easier.
And, well, when it comes to disruption, we'll get to that in a minute. But the next thing on the list is dropping the credit system, and instead you can use any weapons or gear you can carry with some limitations. What would those limitations entail?
Well, first off, the logic behind doing that is it's the SCP Foundation, and shoehorning in a credit system, I don't want to say it goes against canon, because it really is, it's kind of a loose canon for SCP, but it didn't feel appropriate because you don't really go to work and then you have to save up money to buy your own guns. So it would make more sense if the Foundation would just give you anything you can carry. And in order to balance that, I thought of a system in which you can carry as much as you want depending on what you're wearing. For example, a backpack, or if you're just wearing a swimsuit or something, you're not going to be able to carry much. Mm-hmm. But in order to balance that out, there's now a system called SUS, which is kind of a meme, but the more you are able to carry, the more suspicious you look out in public. And it's kind of a balance because a lot of the SCP role-playing aspects are going to take place investigating things, talking to public people, going out in public. And if you're wearing SWAT gear and carrying a sniper rifle in public, that's going to definitely cause an issue. So I kind of use that as a way of balancing out how much you're able to carry.
Yeah, I'm a bit reminded of the light and heavy builds you see in, like, Payday 2.
Yeah.
Where You take the heavy build if you're expecting a fight. You take the light build if you're trying to not get in a fight.
Yeah, it's very much like that. And you can have two uniforms on your character sheet. So you can go back to your base, you get on your business suit, you have a pistol, hidden in your pocket, you go talk to some civilians, but then you find out that the SCP is located at a certain, structure. So you go back to your base, you put on your, you know, um, game face and get all your gear, get all your weapons, and then go fight.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, if the public saw you like that, they'd say something's up. So
Yeah,
that's the way I balanced it. Yeah.
I'd say in the same vein, you have the notion of certain say the Men in Black and how you are heavily discouraged from using the equipment you get as a member of the MIB in public.
Exactly.
Because, well, for one, you've got crazy ass gear, and second off, as was pointed in the first movie, the only reason people go about their happy lives despite all the threats is they don't know about them.
Exactly, yeah. It's better to kind of have a happy medium where you're a little suspicious, but you got enough gear. The public isn't going to have too much of a alert because they seen you walking down the street while you're still armed and ready in case shit goes down.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing when it comes to that, there's gonna be different degrees of it. Like if it's already in what could be considered a disaster area, and you're in like bomb disposal gear, people aren't gonna make as much of a fuss.
Yeah. If you're dressed up like a military officer and you go into a military base, people aren't gonna be bat an eye to that either. It all depends on where you're going.
Yeah. So, and I'm guessing that instead the focus is on your carry limit, a la the equipment slots you see in something like the Black Hack.
Yeah, there's each outfit that you get to choose from. I think there's like I can't think of the number, but there's stuff like SWAT gear, business suits, hiking, like someone who looks like they're going hiking. Each one of those outfits has 1 to 3 weapon slots, and those have numbers, and those slot numbers determine how big of a gun you can carry. Like if you have a slot size of 5, then you can carry a gun that has a mass of 5 or less.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, and then, of course, after that, there's the question of character security levels. Which there was a very strong security level system in the first game, in the first edition.
Yeah.
So how have they been reworked?
Yeah, first edition, I kind of wanted to do I don't want to say a gimmick, but kind of like a fun little thing where chapters were locked away behind security levels, so that as players grew in strength and gained more security level access, they could read more parts of the book. But that when I'm going through play testing and a lot of the feedback, people just were like, let me just read the book. So that was kind of pushed aside. And since security levels in role playing often are mostly a narrative thing, and I just changed that so it's just narrative. So it's just what your character has, what information they can access, instead of a system mechanic which unlocks better level guns and stuff like that. It just makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, this is where we get to the one thing you had hinted at, so it's time to fire off that little Chekhov's gun. Disruption classes.
Okay. So, there's 3 different ways to make characters in this system. There's 45 pre-made characters. You can copy over the stats, rename them, and give them a different loadout. There's fast character creation, which is 4 steps, and it allows you to make a character with classes. I know a lot of people classes are kind of divisive in tabletop role-playing games. Sometimes you get people who are like, I like games with classes, and other times you get people who are like, classes aren't they kind of go against the idea of having a truly customized character. So I added the best of both worlds. If you want to make a fast character, you can do so in 4 steps. You choose a class, you get your name, you spend tokens to increase your attributes, you choose your loadout, and then you're pretty much done. And then there's advanced character creation, which once you've played the game a couple times, you're probably going to want to do. It takes a little bit longer to make a character, but it opens up the idea that you can literally make anything you want. Oh, hold on a second. There we go. You can choose your age and your disruption class, and those 2 aspects will determine. Well, let me let me roll it back a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. With disruption classes, there are 5 different levels. The first level, you will start off fairly weak, but at the end of every gaming session or every chapter, when the GM gives you rewards, you get the most. And then at the very opposite end of that spectrum, you will start off extremely powerful. You will have tons of dice, you'll have tons of abilities, but you won't get any experience. And then everything in between is kind of leading up to that. So like the very center one, you start off pretty strong, but not OP, and you get decent rewards, but not crazy rewards. But yeah, there's 5 different levels, and they do determine other things as well. But I'm not sure if how deep you want to dive into that.
We can save that for a little bit later on. But getting into that. In jumping from first to second, were there plans or consideration for doing some sort of conversion guide so people could bring their characters from first to second edition?
The monster stats and hit points, and generally you're going to be able to convert it over pretty easily. If you have stats from first edition for an SCP, for example, they will convert over pretty much 1-to-1. You just drop the decimal points, and you can kind of guesstimate the stats of the monsters. The attributes are the same. The skills, mental, physical, and social for NPCs are the same. As far as PCs, you'll probably want to make it from scratch using the second edition system, because they're different enough where you'd want to treat them as separate systems.
Mm-hmm. Now, since you brought up the class thing earlier, I will note the approach I've taken is I'm ambivalent on whether or not something goes classless or not. My primary rule is each approach has its own upsides and downsides.
Yeah.
Now, if you go with classes, you have strong theming, but going off the beaten path can get tricky. If you go classless, you've got a lot of freedom, but you also have a lot of analysis paralysis and thus a potentially higher floor.
Exactly, yeah.
The people that say, "Oh, I want to go full classless so I can make the character I want," I don't see them running hero system all that much, or GURPS. Then again, GURPS isn't. A full thing of GURPS isn't that where angels fear to tread kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just because you need multiple session zeros, and then somebody breaks out the extra books, and next thing you know, you're in a padded room, telling everybody you're not crazy. Okay, maybe not that part, but you get the point.
That's pretty close.
Yeah. But I will note that I'm always in favor of what I will call archetypes. Things like starting packages with a little bit of guidance, but not necessarily a rigid class. Because when people are talking about that sort of class, they're thinking of D&D like classes where you get set things at these different thresholds.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Anima calls its setup class-based, but in practice it really isn't. It's still an archetype that just has it that you learn certain things at a more effective rate than others.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the classes that you've got, it seems that it's far more of a starting package than anything else. I think that'd be accurate.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of a way of getting introduced into the system with sort of a preset package. A lot of people just want to jump into the action.
Hmm.
So I kind of pre-made the characters, but you still are able to purchase your own attributes. So it gives you a loadout. It gives you a basic set of skills. It doesn't do the thing where you'll have an ongoing how do I say this? Like, there's no effects from purchasing a class that you can't get from advanced character creation as well.
Hmm. And with that in mind, I'd like to do a little bit of word association, kind of a really bad Rorschach test. So,
All right.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to list off some of the classes, and I'd like to get a feel for the first character that comes to mind that would fit that particular class / archetype. And
Oh,
it can
geez.
be from any medium. It doesn't have to be tied to SCP.
Okay. All right. I might take a minute, but yeah.
So, starting with the anomaly expert.
I'd say a perfect fit would be Dr. Darling from the video game Control.
All right.
I don't know if you played that, but it's amazing. I just finished it for like the 6th time.
I have. I said that Control was the first game in a while that felt like an actual Remedy game. I still haven't played Alan Wake 2, so I can't say if that process continued. But
I have not either. I plan on getting it though.
Next is D class.
Oh, geez. I mean, it's kind of standard in the SCP universe that D class are pretty prevalent in the storytelling. I can't think of any specific characters that weren't players in my campaign because I've had lots of players play D classes. Geez. Drawing a blank here. I'm sorry, Mildred.
Yeah. And admittedly, the concept of the D class is pretty broad, so you could pretty much have it as the survivor of any slasher movie or horror movie in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
But next is the heavy.
Lots of wrongfully used.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
Next is the heavy.
The heavy. I would probably. I mean, that's a very common, I guess, trope in video games. I might have taken from. There's a heavy in the Heist. There's a heavy in Team Fortress 2. It's a character from any medium. I mean, you could go total Hollywood and just say The Rock from any movie he's ever been in. I don't know.
I was gonna say the Dozer in Payday 2.
There you go. That's a perfect one too.
You know, walking around with a minigun while in a bomb disposal outfit.
Yeah.
But next is the medic.
A good medic. A good medic. I mean, I don't know why I keep thinking Carol from The Walking Dead, even though she wasn't really a medic, but something about her, I don't know, just popped in my head. I mean, this is a Rorschach test, so let's go with her.
Yeah. Next would be the modern ninja.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of like a fun class. I definitely thought of a specific character from one of my previous campaigns. A friend of mine, his name's Jared, made kind of like a ninja-like character and it was a modern day campaign. And he wore like this black jumpsuit, and he had a sword, and that's kind of what sticks out in my head right now. Unfortunately, it's not from common media that you would know about, but another good example would be Gray Fox from the Metal Gear series.
Yeah, I figured you'd lean into that since the uniform style is called a sneaking suit on the class.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. There's a couple of references here and
so
there.
I could either go with any of the snakes or with Gray Fox or
Raiden.
pre-cyborg Raiden. Uh,
Yeah.
Next is the scientist.
Egon Spengler, first one that came to my mind. But also there's Dr. Kondraki. Any of the doctors I can think of from the SCP Wiki. There's so many.
Yeah. I didn't want to lean into characters from the SCP Wiki because I felt like that'd be cheating.
Yeah. Egon Spengler, any of the Ghostbusters come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I'm a scientist.
Yeah. The next would be the Scout.
The Scout. Let me look at the picture. I have the PDF open in front of me.
I mean, looking at the art,
my
headset keeps making me think of the Scout from Two Fort.
The Scout. Wow. It was kind of out there, but again, we are doing word association. I'm going to say Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad / Better Call Saul.
All right.
He's very good at spying on people from a distance.
The Soldier.
If I was a soldier, I would model my character off of Dean Winchester.
Interesting
sort
choice.
of jack of all trades type of character, yeah.
And lastly, the Spy.
The Spy. I'll go with Ada Wong from Resident Evil.
All right. At the very least, I ended up hearing a spy concept, and people aren't thinking of James Bond.
Yeah.
Which is not. But
yeah, I always liked Ada Wong's character. You never really know if she was a good character or a bad character, and she was just kind of playing both sides. So it was kind of James Bond-esque, but I like that whole idea of you don't know who to trust and you don't know how far you can trust them, but you still see good in their heart, so you want to trust them. Mm-hmm. It's a fun dynamic, fun drama and role-playing.
Yeah. Although I usually tell people when they want to play a spy fiction character, don't think of James Bond, think of Jason Bourne.
Oh, that's a good one.
Especially
also,
since,
don't go against the party.
There's that too. And if somebody wants to do the whole playing both sides, then I, as the GM, are going to be asking some very pointed questions, because I got to figure out, okay, how can I integrate that into the campaign without it feeling like they're playing a villain character while also not.
Yeah.
Or have it that
exactly.
They're playing against the players. But when it comes to the disruption class, I believe you had set it up that it is a case where it is determining how much in the way of benefits you're getting between sessions, like you're essentially a growth rate.
Exactly, and it's set up so that if you choose the lowest one, it's called Dark. You're going to start off pretty weak. However, your bonuses to damage have a higher ceiling than other classes. So if you do survive long enough, you have the potential of being stronger than the strongest type of character, but you have to last. several sessions. I forget the math offhand, but and the opposite of that one, if you choose to be the strongest, you can even choose. They're called aspects that you purchase. One of the aspects is you play as an SCP, so you can choose that and just if the GM allows it. If the GM allows any disruption class to be played and he gives you the permission to be a SCP, you could request the GM to make stats for an SCP and you just play as that the entire campaign. You won't get any rewards, but I mean, you'll be an SCP. Another thing I will mention is the book heavily tells the director, which is the GM in this game, that you have the option of limiting anything you want to fit your storyline. You don't have to allow every type of disruption class. You can force everyone to start off as dark. You can force everyone to start off as a meta. You can disallow them to play as SCPs. You can disallow them to take anomalous aspects, which is like super abilities, basically being a type red or type green. You can limit whatever you want to fit your story. So it allows the entire book has this guidance for the director to create their own game, and instead of just opening the book and let the players, do whatever they want, it's intended so that it tells your story.
I can get that. Now, when it came to the drama cards, I remember that being something we kind of talked a bit about last time. And I believe that's still there. Were there any significant changes through feedback to the way the drama cards work, or is it mostly the same as it did back in first edition?
The feedback I got from first edition drama cards was mostly positive. I can't think of any criticisms I had. What I did for second edition is instead of... Well, with first edition, I kind of said, you should get drama cards. They're almost standard. I don't know if I said that exactly, but in second edition, they are totally optional. I've run campaigns without them before. I think this current campaign I'm going to run, I'm not going to use drama cards because they can disrupt stories to some degree. But if you're a GM who likes having unexpected twists, I say throw them in because your players are going to love them. With second edition, I expanded the number of cards to 129, and I think first edition only had 80. I added a bunch more. I clarified a couple, and I included a system where higher levels of drama cards are unlocked slowly throughout the campaign instead of just giving the players, a ton of really good ones right to start. And it's an optional system, and there's a quest system now. A couple of cards will say, here's a quest. For example, one of them is like, quest. Find an NPC and turn them into an ally. Like if you find an enemy NPC or some sort of NPC along the way and you get them to join your group in some way, that's a quest. And then you'll get a reward, such as you get +2 charisma or something,
Yeah, I can get that. Now, one of the things that I had to double check to make sure this wasn't in there, that in second edition that was not in first, unless it was in an expansion that I'm just not aware of, is the favor system.
Right.
So,
yeah, second edition now has a favor system.
Yeah, what prompted the introduction to this?
Well, I have a community on my Discord that I've been working with, and one of the members on my Discord suggested including favors, and they kind of elaborated like because with the system you can have any item you want. You could go to the SCP base and get like the best assault rifle or sniper rifle that you can carry, but you may not be able to get some sort of psychedelic Anderson Robotics rocket launcher. So in order to allow that to be included in the game, there's a favor system where it's an optional system, just like drama cards. But if the GM wants to include it, it kind of encourages extra role playing, because any NPC you come across, you could potentially do a favor for them. If they have like a side quest where they want to find a certain item or a person's missing and there's a side story about them looking for them, and you fulfill that favor, you fulfill that request, you'll get a point or 2 points or 3 points. And those points are deterministic on the type of NPC. I'm not going to list them all off, but they're in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get so many different favor points, you can exchange them kind of like a currency for various rewards. And there's anything from getting a can't counter all the way up to causing a nuclear strike on a location. So
yeah. I will admit I'm a bit fond of Dr. Wondertainment's Grenade of Many Things.
That was fun to make.
This might be a bit of a stretch, but it reminds me of the D20 grenade in Cursed Halo.
Oh, yeah. Do I know that? I don't know if I know that.
Cursed Halo is an infamous mod of Combat Evolved done by Inferno Plus that adds a fair amount of chaos to the campaign, including things like messing around with the size and width of different warthogs. So you have long hogs and wide hogs and hogs that have monster truck wheels. Messing around with a bunch of the weapons and introducing the D20 grenade. It is a grenade that looks like a D20. You know exactly what it says on the tin. But in multiplayer, it's a grenade that does random damage. In single player, it can do anything from just doing standard damage to generating random objects to flashbanging to like 200 different potential results. And you never know what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, that sounds exactly 1-to-1 for the intent of the Wondertainment Grenade of Many Things.
It sounds like you were trying to do your version of the Deck of Many Things with the same level of chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, I like a little chaos, especially Wondertainment. I mean, I had a recent campaign last year where the players were in an SCP base, and the circumstances created it so that Dr. Wondertainment was the site director, and the entire facility was just absolute chaos, and it was their job to kind of contain it all.
Mm-hmm. And with that in mind, when it comes, I did note that you. And this is something I think more games should have just by default, have essentially an NPC creation system that isn't full point. It's not full point buy.
Yeah.
Because as I understand it, it is largely you do have the whole character point thing for it, but it's built around threat level.
Yeah. GMs can create NPCs. I mean, you're the GM. You can do anything you want. This is more of a guide, depending on how many chapters your players have survived. If you want to go to try to give them a fair chance while still being threatening, the system gives you a general point buy system, I guess, depending on how many chapters your players have survived. And it allows you to make stats for an NPC that are comparable. And if you put them up against multiple NPCs, then you just combine the threat levels of your NPCs compared to the threat levels of your players. It's sort of like a pseudo level, so you can kind of have an idea of, how difficult the encounters are going to be.
A pseudo level or challenge rating without as many dumb assumptions.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something I've talked about elsewhere, that the idea of challenge rating was fine in principle, but in practice it makes too many assumptions.
Yeah, a lot of it's going to be up to the director to kind of on the fly adjust stats if they need to. If they find out, oops, I'm dishing out lethal damage ×3 to all my players, or oops, this guy has way too low hit points. I was not expecting him to get one shot that quickly, type thing.
Yeah.
So there are any GM should, kind of adjust on the fly if needed. But I think second edition systems NPC creation helps mitigate that to a large degree.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall if thaumatology and reality bending were in first edition.
They were not. There was a reality bending expansion for first edition, and I think it touched on thaumatology, but yeah, in first edition that wasn't really a thing, and that was another request a lot of people said is like, can I be a reality bender? Can I use thaumaturgy? And obviously I wanted to have that included in second edition if I was going to make a whole new edition. So yeah, there's a whole chapter devoted to those two things.
I can certainly get that. So with that in mind, I think it's as good a time as any to go into reality bending and thaumatology, because I think the first one could be considered like psychic ability or any sort of weird stuff that doesn't require rituals.
Yeah, the reality bending system. There's something in the SCP universe called Humes, and the lower the Hume level is in an environment, the less reality functions due to the laws of physics. This is not the perfect definition, but the higher the Hume levels, the more strong the reality is. So if you're in a very high Hume environment, let's just throw out a number, 150 or something like that, if you had a character who could naturally bend reality to its will and it was in that environment, it would have a much more difficult time. Whereas if you were in some sort of like maybe a haunted house or something and reality was kind of breaking down in the area, it would be a lower level Hume, maybe 20, and reality benders would have a much easier time manipulating reality. And that not only creates interesting situations where NPCs could be stronger in certain areas or weaker in certain areas, but it also gives the GM some flexibility if a reality bender in the party happens to be running havoc and doing too much. They could throw them in a situation where there's high Humes, or if you want to do something totally chaotic, throw the entire party into an area with very low Humes, and maybe everybody can bend reality. It's a interesting system, and it's all based off of the SCP wiki's canon. I don't know if the numbers are exactly 1-to-1, but I had to come up with something for the system. Excuse me. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. And then we get to thaumatology, which I guess you could say is magic, but definitely isn't magic, except it totally is.
Yeah. Thaumatology uses ritualistic practices and techniques that either were discovered by the SCP Foundation or there's other groups of interest that utilize thaumatology. The Serpent's Hand, it's taught in Deer College, and it's canon in the SCP Wiki, and it is a way of creating a magical effect without using just raw willpower. It's more of like a ritualistic thing where you have to get supplies, you say incantations, and then you cause an effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can get that. And given the wide variety of what could be done, I know that there's an example, but if someone was trying to figure out whether or not something would count under reality bending or thaumatology, what would be the dividing line? Not a hard line, but kind of a guidance.
With reality bending, it's more of like I guess a telekinetic ability, or just creating matter out of nothingness, something that you would see like a super from like a Marvel movie do or create. And with thaumatology, it's more of, I guess it's kind of more like Call of Cthulhu based magic, where you have to gather supplies, and you're doing something like creating a gateway or doing like something that you would see on the Necronomicon.
Mm-hmm. Just remember, don't read it backwards unless you want to deal with deadites.
I learned that the hard way.
Well, that's why you have the chainsaw as a special weapon. But I'm pretty sure somebody's considered having the whole chainsaw arm thing like Ash.
Oh yeah.
I'd be disappointed if that wasn't brought up in any session.
Yeah, I've had a character actually play as Ash Williams, so definitely.
Yeah, and given how what counts as an SCP can be just about anything, that opens up the floodgates to what you could potentially do. So if you want to blatantly rip off some kind of IP and claim that it's an anomaly, you've got the means to do it.
Yeah, as long as the director gives the green light, you can literally create anything you want.
But I'm guessing something like trying to do the equivalent of an exorcism would count under thaumatology more than anything else.
It would, but reality benders typically have a theme. Let's say you want to make a character who's a reality bender, and you had some sort of possession ability, and you saw somebody who was possessed, like the Exorcist, and you said, "Can I use my reality bending to exorcise the demon?"
Mm-hmm.
That would kind of fall under your theme, and it would typically be allowed.
Mm-hmm. Now, since we brought up games made by Remedy, I'd like to bring up the one that I have a complicated relationship, and that's Quantum Break. If somebody approached you at your table and said, I want to do reality bending in that time manipulation setup as in Quantum Break, what would your response to be how that would be done?
When did Quantum Break come out?
Let me double check, because I'm not 100% on the year.
I haven't played that yet, and I want to definitely pick that up. I haven't played... The only Remedy game I know of that I've played for sure is Control.
2016. And I have a long history with Remedy games going all the way back to Max Payne. And
Okay.
some of them I've had... Quantum Break was one of those games where I had a complicated relationship. I called it a good story told poorly.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
But one of the big things is dealing with a substance known as chronotons in order to facilitate time travel. A time travel that's a much more grounded affair. It has much more in common with the 2004 film Primer, which was very strict about how it handles time travel. You can't do the whole Back to the Future thing with it. You have a very specific set of time that you can work with. Usually no more than, I think, 4 hours. And there's certain things that you have to do to prevent problems. That I'm vastly simplifying it, of course, because though the spoiler mandate has come and gone, I do want more people to watch Primer so that they can get a feel for what exactly it's doing.
I've seen it a couple times. Last time I saw it was probably 5 years ago. Yeah, I like time travel movies.
Mm-hmm.
Edge of Tomorrow, Back to the Future.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Have you read the manga that Edge of Tomorrow was adapting?
I have not.
All You Need Is Kill. Like that is the name of the original manga.
Okay.
But the point is that with the protagonist in Quantum Break, you have a whole lot of stopping time to use it as a shield, slipping in and out of normal time to appear to move more quickly. That kind of thing.
Okay.
A little bit superhero-y.
Yeah, you could definitely make.
But the gist is still there. That would probably be reality manipulation, but how would it work within your system?
If you made an Amida character where you get to start off extremely powerful and you focused all of your points into reality bending, you could probably get that pretty high. And then you would just say your theme is time manipulation and see if the director rolls his eyes at you or if he says go ahead. And if he gives the green light, then each instance of what you want, the effect you want to create, is handled case by case by the director. It's not a system where you purchase specific abilities for time manipulation. It's more of this is my theme, this is the effect I want to create, and the director determines something called difficulty dice, and then rolls them all at once, adds them all together, and gives you a final difficulty. And then you calculate your Humes versus your reality bending. It's a whole system, and if you succeed, then you do the effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not really something where you purchase specific abilities. It's more of like it's like first edition's version of reality bending.
Mm-hmm. And trying to give a list of specific effects to reality bending, I think, would probably miss the point.
Yeah.
Like, it's meant to be a catch-all for things that players can do that don't necessarily fit within the normal rules of, well, reality.
Exactly. And it's designed to be a system where you it kind of mimics Mage the Ascension a little bit, where you come up with the effect first and then decide what is rolled afterward, versus other role-playing games where you purchase Fireball or purchase, Mana Shield or something like that. And I do like the ability to give players open range on anything that they want. I want players to create any character that they can imagine, and that was the intent.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, as far as the future of SCP, the tabletop RPG, what do you have planned for the coming weeks, months, what have you?
I'm definitely done making new editions. I'm only going to add expansions. And at the ground level, when I created SCP 2nd Edition, I had in mind how can I make this easily incorporate new expansions. And that's when I came up with the aspect system, adding more classes, adding the weapon customization expansion. That's the first one that came out. Everything from the ground level was designed with expansions in mind, because I don't want to be the only person to make expansions. I want the community to make them as well. I recently partnered with a website called Arcane Vault Assembly, and they have sort of a hub where people can go to create new expansions and such. And I also have a little package on my Discord where you can download, if you know InDesign, a template to make your own expansions. Mm-hmm. And on top of all this, I'm going to be making my own expansions. I'm currently working on an expansion that has a bunch more aspects, and in the future I'm going to make another expansion where you can have companions. The idea was that I wanted to have canine units and rules for the dog, but why not expand that a little bit further, and maybe you could have SCP-999 as a companion, and just kind of like have like a pet system. So there's that. There's a vehicle expansion I want to do. There's lots of expansions coming for 2nd edition. But yeah, I'm not going to do a 3rd edition.
It'd be a little too early to do a 3rd edition as is.
Yeah.
But
the future is 2nd edition.
But I will certainly be looking forward to seeing how that develops with time. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens around here.
It was fun.
Anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, Drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Bye.
And of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!